Yo, yeah, man. Um, I'm gonna have to let y'all know. I'm gonna need y'all to like, subscribe, and share when y'all see this because you ain't gonna get this nowhere else. I'm gonna let you know now. You ain't in from a rude awakening, but you're in for a real awakening. I mean, wide open awakening. You ain't about to get this nowhere else. If you trying to really understand the mysteries of life, the purpose for the creation, the purpose behind life, the idea behind mankind, oh yeah, you gonna want to start here. You gonna want to start your journey. And if you already been on your journey, you gonna want to take this path and this road right here and travel down this path with me. Um, and it's gonna be a series of videos, by the way. So please like, subscribe, and stay tuned. Please do. Now, what you're looking at the decoding of scripture, the Holy Bible scripture texts, by the way. Um, you're looking at what is considered the modern Hebrew and the Paleo Hebrew, the calligraphic form and the pictographic form, right? So, this is the word Eden in modern Hebrew. Now, some people be like, hey, I know there's no vowels, da da da, woo woo wah. That's because at one point there was no vowels, it was straight consonants. And you know everything goes from right to left. So that's Ayin, Dalet. Ayin means it's silent, but with the vowel can make E, A, I, O, U. Then Dalet is the duh, and then Nun is the N. And that's the same thing. And the pictograph, that's an I. That's a door. And they call it the seed. But I would say it could be a seed as a seed of man, or seed as a plant, and the seed of a serpent, like a snake or a sperm. I say it's all four, right? Now, I'm gonna give you some highlights, some PowerPoints of this whole series, right? One, we're gonna discuss the fact that one, Eden was not a garden, but there was a garden in Eden. Two, there is a purpose for Eden, right? And as well for Eden's garden. Then we're going to talk about what is Eden. 4, the serpent. Was the serpent already in Eden, or was Adam's presence the result of the serpent entering into the garden? Right? All right. And then there's a plethora of things, but I'm gonna give you those highlights. So let's just begin. Let's start off. Let's start off somewhere. First, where we're gonna go is we're gonna go to the first mentioning of Eden. So we have to go to Genesis chapter 2. And by the way, I would like to share with you some of the tools that I'm using. Remember, this is an introduction video, so I know you're excited, but bear with me. The Interlinear Bible, Hebrew, Greek, and English, right? It allows you to see the biblical text in the original form and gives you the English along with it. And the numbers are associated with what we call a lexicon, to where you can go and verify the accuracy of the translation. In addition to that, get a little bit more in-depth knowledge of what is really being conveyed by the self-existing God. For as many of us know now that some languages cannot be translated when it comes to written text because there's no equivalent in these modern day languages for ancient scripts, right? So it's imperative that the students of life, the disciples of God, get them one of these: a strong, exhaustive concordance, not just so you can brush through and see all the words and be able to reference them, but so you can get the Hebrew and Greek dictionary in the back. And to use that along alongside your study of your interlinear Bible, so you can become more familiar with the Greek and the Hebrew and understand what the word is truly saying. Oh, and by the time you're done with this video, you're going to fully understand why. You're going to be ready to get you one of these if you don't already have them. But then by the end of this video, if you do, you're going to understand the power by having these tools. Right? Alright, so now we go to Genesis chapter 2, verse 8. And it says, Jehovah God planted a garden in Eden. See? Verse 8 lets you know that there's a garden in Eden. A lot of people, when they speak, people are under the impression that Eden is a garden. No, there's a garden in Eden. Eastwards, right? And that's where he put the man, when he had formed the man, right? Okay. So then the next time we see Eden used is in verse 15 of the same chapter. And Jehovah took man and put him into the Garden of Eden to work and to keep it. Alright? So that's what we're going to focus on right there. We're going to go in depth about this. Because here we're going to discover a little bit more of what Eden is. But before we touch on all of this, let us look at the words in Hebrew where it says that he has taken man, right, and placed man in there to do what? It says to work it and to keep it, right? But the words that we see for to work it is abad. Now, in your modern translations, it's probably going to say to till and all this stuff that's going to kind of confuse you, right? This is the word. This is what it would look like in Hebrew, right? Modern day form right here. Abad, right? I-N, and then the second letter as bet, and then dalet, which is the fourth letter. Excuse me. That's the fourth letter. Right? So we got the 16th letter, we got the second letter, and we got the fourth letter. And then this is the I, and this is the symbol for a house. But what you notice, what's really interesting about the second one is that looks like the same symbol they use for QS scan codes. That's actually the original where they got that symbol from. The QSR scan code, they got it from the Hebrew pictograph. And that's also means house. And what's unique also about Hebrew is that each letter in Hebrew is a word. It has its own name. It's its own association. It is its own entity. Each letter is a living vibration, and it has its own name. I-N means I. This letter I-N is a word in the dictionary that means I. Bet is a word in the dictionary that means house. Dalet is a word in the dictionary that means door. And they're all connected to their images. They are a brand. They are all individual brands that are connected, comprised of one brand, which is Yahweh, right? Working all in the framework of God's multiverse. Now, this word abad means to work, to be worked on, to become, to manifest, right? That's what that word means there. So I'm going to give y'all a moment. You know what I'm saying? Anybody want a snapshot? Write it down. You know what I'm saying? I-N, the image of an eye. Then bet, which means house. Then dalet, which means door. You know? Boom. And then the second letter, second word, is shamar. So we got shamar, right? Shamar up here. When the dagesh is on the right side, it makes the SH. When the dagesh is on the left side, it makes the S sound. Right? So then we got shamar, which is also where we get the name Shamir from. Shamar means to watch, to guard, to observe, to reserve, and to preserve. Right? So these are the two components of why Adam was placed in the garden. Right? Adam was placed in the garden to work. Right? To work. To be worked on. Manifest. To become. Guard. Watch. Observe. Reserve. Preserve. This is why he was placed in this garden. All right? We could talk about how he failed to do all these things in another video. Obviously he wasn't guarding his heart. He wasn't guarding Eden. Nor was he guarding Eve, because, she went and flirted with another reptilian. And I said another because they're reptilian, but we'll get to that soon. Yeah. And that's because he lacked it to do the first part, was allow himself to continuously be worked on with God, and start to therefore become more like God, and thus manifest the fruits of God, because it would take that power of God to come against that reptilian. And during that Mortal Kombat situation he was approaching, he wouldn't have even dealt with Mortal Kombat, then he had a bite from the fruit. So now we deal with Mortal Kombat because of him. Thanks to him wanting to literally play games. So, alright, so now let's deal with the esoterical, because this is all esoterical now that we're stepping in. We're venturing into the Word of God from the esoterical playing field. And esoterical means the hidden meaning from within. Looking at the meaning and the value of a message from within. Something that is not obviously seen. The deeper inference. The inference behind the inference. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we're dealing with here. So with that, there's a technique that is used, and in Hebrew they call it tumorah. Tumorah is decoding the text. So what you're looking at me decoding the text. How did I do it? I looked at the context of the content. Okay, what I mean by that is 2 verse 8 in Genesis is the whole entire verse is the content. But the way the verse is structured and what is being said provides a context. But in Hebrew, there's several contexts. There could be several contexts to just one passage, one verse. In order to discover that, you must look within the Hebrew. And because it's so deep, because we're dealing with the depth and the wisdom of God, you could just start off with just one word. Instead of doing the whole entire verse, you just deal with one word that is used. So I decided to deal with the subject matter. The garden. And I guess the man was the object in it, right? So Eden is the garden, right? So now the next thing I do is, okay, I see going to Genesis 3, I have grounds to look at it from an esoterical sense, in a deeper philosophical sense, because I see that Genesis 3 is told in an allegory. An allegorical message is a message that is a story. It's a mythological story told with underlining truths. So Genesis 3 was written as an allegory, right? With parables in it as well. And parables, that's a compound word in Greek. Para, meaning to be thrown, tossed to the side, to the front, behind, or beyond, or under. And the bow is the substance, the message. So within the framework of the verse, there's a hidden message behind, beneath, within, and beyond. That's essentially what a parable really means. So when I seen that, I knew I had grounds to look deeper into what is really being said. And because this was so spiritual, we're on a spiritual plane, I chose to point out certain words that was related. Right? So I went inside the dictionary and I looked for, I started with I am because that's the first letter in Eden. And I looked for words that were related to the subject matter at hand. So number one, we get to I. The first word is I, which is the meaning of the word. I decided to deal with the meaning of each, well, at least for the first two. I decided to deal with the meaning for the first two. And the last one, I wanted to make sure that it connected with both of those. It was a compound, a combination of both of those as far as the word I chose. So the first word I chose was obviously I am, which means I. The second word the first word for the second letter is door, which is the meaning dalet. Dalet means door. Noon, I chose to be at home. They're like, now how is being at home connected to these? Well, I'm going to show you. You got an eye, you got a door, and you got the seed of man. Right? But this seed also symbolizes the consciousness. How do we know that? Because we say the eye is the window to the soul. Right? The eye is what? They say the eye is the window to the soul, but the window can also be translated as a door, as a gate as well. And this word dalet can also be translated as a door, as a gate as well. And as a window. Dalet could be representing a window. Right? So, therefore, I know that this seed can also symbolize not just a plant, not just a sprout, not just a snake, not just a sperm, not just a man's seed, far as like the beginning stage of gestation, but the soul on the astral plane, the media, right? So therefore, the hidden message, when you see these on one level, because there's levels to the messages, on one level, the message is this: the eye opens the door of the conscious, which is the seat of the soul. The eye opens the door of the conscious, which is the seat of the soul, right? So if you see down here, you have the lower self, the mid self, and the higher self, right? The animalistic nature of man. Then you have the conscious, and then you have the subconscious and the superconscious, right? That's what you have right here. And then the soul sits in between all of that as the medium. You know where the subconscious is. People think that the subconscious is over. No. Subconscious sits in between all of that, right? There's no it's not a vertical situation. It's circular. You know what I mean? So, nevertheless, the eye opens the door of the conscious, which is the seat of the soul. So, in other words, Eden was not about a physical plane. When they cast down to a physical plane because that's where the medium set in particular. Things become a little bit more finite the further you come down. So when they were beamed down because of what happened, they landed in that particular region where they split where they describe the rivers. But on another level, the rivers, the parts of the rivers represents the four divisions of the brain. The four divisions of the brain. And there is where they talk about the pineal gland, but the pineal gland is just dealing with the sixth chakra. What happened to the seventh? It's from the seventh where you beam up. You know what I'm saying? Like, we ain't not gonna go too much into some things as of right now, but that's what we got going on here. We're talking about the garden on a super conscious and subconscious level right now. That's what we're dealing with the garden. We're dealing with that aspect of the garden. We're not dealing with Ethiopia, Mesopotamia, India, and China. We're not dealing with all of that. We're going back further. We're getting a little bit deep into this. So if you haven't dealt with the beginning, this is where you need to go. You know what I'm saying? Here's the intermediate class level. Prayer and fasting and ask for guidance, because we're getting deep here, right? We're about to get real deep. All right. So now we dealt with that. The opening up. Again, the eye opens the door of the conscious, which is the seat of the soul. Okay? And I put Yamab because I like to say my name in this setting with a Y versus a J. And it's broken like that because there's a meaning behind my name. And we'll get to that soon one day. Now, cool. So the next thing I do is I break down the words within them. Because within one word, you can make a sentence out of one word, right? Eden. So this is how we get to breaking it down. Within one word, within one letter of the one word, we find another word. And then we get to the second letter of the same word, we find another word. And then we get to the last letter, we find another word, and that can become one sentence. But let's run that back. Each of these words, if we deal with the paleo as well, each of them have its own hidden meaning. So that alone becomes another sentence. And then when we put all three of them together, it becomes a paragraphical message. Right? And as you can see this, I did this in exponents. I quantified the level. So let me give you an example of that. So remember how I just broke down this one, right? I'm about to go to I and break down I, and then I'm gonna go to Dalet and break down Dalet, and then I'm gonna go to Noon and break this down, and I'm gonna expect you to subscribe, like, and share this video, all right? Because we gotta get this light out here and really bring the people back to life and raise up this consciousness of our community. You know what I'm saying? And start off with our home base, Earth. Like, we not playing games. I really need y'all to like and subscribe and don't play no games. Now let's get this thing cracking. Now look, we got I, and then we got a hand, and then we got Noon again. Then we got that little serpent. We got that little sperm, that little sneaky little sperm, that little slimy little sperm, that little serpent, right? We got that little bad boy there going. But let's pay attention to number 10, Yod. This is the 10th letter. And Yod means hand, right? We already know I-N is an I, but now we're dealing with a new letter. For those who may not be familiar, this is the 10th letter, is Yod. Now, you know what's interesting about the hand, right? When you look at a keyboard, right, for a computer, you put your hand on what is considered the mouse. What does the mouse look like? The mouses look like an eye. And in fact, if you go get your little mouse for your keyboard, you got the little thing in the middle where you can press to scroll down. That even makes it look like the pupil of the eye. Right? Now you want to know, how is this any connection? Well, check this out. Right? You have an I in this letter, you have a hand right next to it. Right? When you're looking at the computer, when your eyes are looking at the computer, you put your hand on the mouse to guide it. So this message right here says the eye guides the soul, guides the soul, which thus guides the subconscious. The eye is the guide to the soul, thus the guide to the subconscious. Wherever your eye turns, there your conscious will turn. You're consciously looking at things. The more you consciously deals with it, it starts to download into the subconscious. That's why Jesus says in the Gospels, let your eye be single. For if your eye is single, then your whole body will be filled with light. But if not, and if your eyes filled with darkness, how great is that darkness? Because then it's perversion. Right? Boom. So then I write down here, I'm going to show you just how this goes, you know. The eye are the souls, the eyes. Because no, I put eyes because you have several eyes. You don't just have 3 of them. You have a lot of eyes. The eyes are the soul's guide. Perspective and perception are the main components of the conscious awareness program. Right? Because when we deal with consciousness, we're talking about levels of awareness and thus levels of existence. Every level of consciousness is connected to another plane. So then we come down here, we see, this is what I'm talking about here. See, the soul starts off down here. The greater awareness, the higher level of consciousness you can enter in, and then there's stages to each level of consciousness, and then gives you different access to different planes. But your senses are connected to each plane. So then you're able, sometimes you're smelling and detecting something from a different plane. You're like, I smell a spirit. Yeah, you can smell a spirit because you're operating on a different level of consciousness. Dad, I'm starting to see things. Yeah, you're seeing things because your soul is entering into a whole other level of consciousness. You know? And then let's get there, because then if we look at the second letter, we look at the second one of this, we see knowledge. Knowledge takes you there. The word da'at, I don't want to skip. I'm sorry, but I had to get here real quick. The da'at is knowledge. Knowledge helps raises the level. These conversations is raising our consciousness right now. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. All right. So now we get to the second. So now that we already traversed over here, let's move on because everything goes right to left. The sun rises from the right side and then it sets in the left side. So they say it sets. It don't set. It keeps going. The sun ain't never set tripping. You heard me? But we got Dalet. Now we're moving into Dalet, right? So you're gonna notice something interesting here. You know what I'm saying? I got a $5 cookie for anybody. If it was live, I could really do it. That's why we gotta get there, because I'm gonna be giving out big treats. You know, I'll give people $5 cookie, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Whoever can get this right and guess these two, what are these right here? What are we looking at? You know what I'm saying? What are we looking at? What does this look like to you? Right? All right. This is 2 doors. The word Dalet. So we got the 4th letter, and then we got, let's go on our list. I made a list. So this is what you can print out one of these, and they can help you. You can use this to help guide you with the numbers, because we're going to get into numerology and all that one of these days as well. I mean, all this is going to be part of the series. I'm telling you, it's going down. Then we got the 12th letter. I just wanted you to see for yourself to know we ain't playing. So we got the 4th letter, the 12th letter, and the 4th letter again. 4 and 12, oh my goodness. You would think we playing a dice game up here, like we really shaking the gates. Paradise. Get it? Now, 4th letter, 12th letter, 4th letter. Boom. So we got a door, and then we got a staff. A shepherd's staff. And another door. 2 doors. And if we use the door 3 times, 3 doors down. But I'm not going to, that's a whole nother level. We're just going to deal with phase 1 of level 1. So now we're going to break down this, right? In the invisible, there lies the indivisible sovereign power of the ineffable, wielding his arts and craft. All right? So one door is this is 1 level, by the way. One door is expressing a doorway to the visible. The other one is a doorway to the invisible. The shepherd's staff in between is letting you know the shepherd moves and operates in between the visible and the invisible aspects of reality. And because he does this, and by him all things consist, he's always sovereign. He's always sovereign. In addition to that, you see I put numbers up here. I'm going to speak on this one real quick because this is relevant. That's why you have north, east, south, west, right? see how I went into that order? North, east, south, west. So that's the quadrants of the universe. And, for some universes, respectively. Now, 4 also represents foundations. So we're dealing with the planes as well. So in each of the invisible realms, there's foundations. There's dimensions. Like, for example, in the cosmic realm, there's several planes. All stars and planets are not lined up like on a flat plane, like how they project, on History Channel. That's not how it works. Planets sometimes can traverse past one another and be right under each other. Stars can be like this. So when you be looking up, sometimes you're not even noticing that stars are not just like far apart, far as horizontal, but vertical wise, they're on different dimensions, like how one step is above another step. Those are 2 different dimensions. Each step is on a different dimension. And that's the same thing with the stars. That's why the words stair and star are connected. You take the I out, you got star. Stairway, starway. It's the same. Pay attention. I'm breaking down the words. I'm very, 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 very fluent in linguistics. Now, boom. So we can get stuck on 4. We don't want to do that. So, because 4 is a powerful number. So let's move away from that horse and slide further down the course. And we're going to get to something that's real deep right here. You know what I'm saying? Because this is dealing with dad. So, I'm real sentimental about this one. So we got Nun, we got Aleph, and we got Hey. So we see the modern form. We got Nun, Aleph, and we got Hey. Right? So we got the 14th letter, we got the first letter, we got the 5th letter jumping off here. You know what I'm saying? And let me just go ahead and do some of the math. You know what I'm saying? Let me do the math with you. Because this is getting real interesting. I want you to pay attention to how we're going to step into numerology just real quick. We don't want to spend too much time. Because I know this is a lot to digest. So look, there's different ways of breaking down numbers in numerology, different ways of handling it. There's one thing that we do, like how we find the ratio, golden ratio and stuff, like we can consume the number. Consummation dealing with adding. So if you was to add this, you can add this up several ways. If we add them up together, we have 15, right? 1 plus 14 is 15. And then plus 5, that's 20. So we got 2. But then check this out. Pay attention to this. If we do 1 plus 4, that's 5. You know what I'm saying? And then we do plus 6, that's plus 1, that's 6. Plus 11, plus 5, that's 11. And then if we add 1 plus 1, that's equal 2. So eventually we get back to 2 either way. We get back to 2 either way, right? And then so there's 2 primary principles I'm going to get at with this word, which means to be at home. This word na'ah, this is what it spells. Na-ah. Nun is a na. Aleph is a ah. And then it drags out ah. Na-ah. Right? And it means one definition means to be at home. That's the primary definition. Right? So before I give you the proverb, this Nun here in Paleo Hebrew is a seed. This is the head of a bull, right? This is the body of a man expressing exaltation, like beam me up, exalt, praise, surrender, all of those things, right? And when do want a football game, the ref goes like this, the team goes like this, touchdown, the person's at home. He touchdown. Boom. So we get here, we see whether as Son of Man or as Son of God, God is at home. For both dualism and singularity and non-dualism consist by the ineffable. Thus, from the lowest to the highest point of existence, God can be found there at home. All right. All these are images of an entity. These are all nouns, but they're living organisms, right? So the beast here represents the lowest. Bestiality is the lowest part of existence. When we talk about God or one made in God's image and likeness, that's the lowest self. Remember, this represents the soul. Then the man represents the head. We see that in Egypt when we dealt with what y'all call the Sphinx. For you people who are familiar with the Greek, it is known as the Sphinx, right? The lion body with the African guy's face. But in Egypt, it's respectfully known as Her-M-Akhet, which means Heru on the right, on the horizon. Khufu or Khafre, one of them made it of themselves, supposedly. But that's neither here nor there. Just a fun fact. I digress. Nevertheless, so you see the three aspects of man representing two things. No matter what level of existence, God is always at home. Thus, you can find God. God manifests himself in all these phases because in each of these components, there's levels to it. There's levels to the lower self. There's levels to the astral planes. There's levels to the highest self. And there in each level, God can be found. In all realms and all dominions, God can be found at home. Because all of this is an aspect of God's reality. A different channel of God's reality. And that's why all this consumes back up to two. Dualism and non-dualism. God is self-existent, so God is non-dualistic in the ultimate form. God is neither he or she. But for the creation, which is dualistic, because the creator is non-dualistic, the creation is dualistic, he brings these expressions so that the creation from every aspect is able to connect, identify with the purpose of connecting. All right? And see, these are some of the things that Adam was brought to the garden to work on. And the Creator teaches, so he's working on him, as working on his student. And as he works on his student is able to, the student's like the flower in the garden. He's able to become something because of what's embedded in him, and what he's becoming then becomes manifested. And through this process, the free will is given to the student to guard. He has a choice to be caught off guard or to guard, to watch, to observe, because the things that he must guard is part of the process of becoming a god, to take on the nature of a god. As he's learning and journeying and traveling, he has to protect, he has to take on the responsibilities of God, right? So he has to be on guard, he has to be watching. Watch is dealing with the consciousness, the levels of consciousness. Observe is like experiment. Observe, the difference between watch and observe is like observe is dealing with experiment, like observatory. You're studying. Watch is like being on point, being alert, having discretion. Is that kind of, And then you got to reserve the resources and preserve certain things on your heart. You understand me? So yeah, we're gonna end right here. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna recapitulate everything, but we're gonna leave off at level 1. I wanted to finally deal with this subject matter from an esoterical understanding, because I try to explain to people, no matter how many times you read the Bible, there's always another level. There's no private truth. There's no private interpretation. But there's no fulfilling your knowledge when it comes to God, because God is infinite. That means that if God was at, just hypothetically, there was a number that could be calculated at God's wisdom, by the time you even get to a fragment of that, he's already quantified that times that same number, because God is always infinitely growing. There's no cap to what God knows. There's no cap to what God does, because you as the creation, God even experiences and grows off of you, let alone off of himself, right? So there's no end to the word of God. Even if you're just getting what's composed in the 66 books, that's coming from an infinite mind. So there's an infinite cesspool of wisdom available to decode this. It's just that it has to be led, your soul has to be led by the Holy Spirit. God has, this word is pronounced dad. Dad has to be dad. And dad in Hebrew means the seat of love, which is the breast, and we know that the heart sits there, and the heart symbolizes the conscious. Dad has to be dad, meaning that the spirit of dad has to sit at your soul and guide your soul. Like a student, with a student driver. Driver's ed. You understand me? And then you'll be able to understand all of this and start to reach here. As it says in Ephesians, that you have to grow. In Ephesians 3, you have to grow in the fullness and the knowledge and the stature of Christ. There's levels. You have to grow in the fullness and knowledge of statures. So that's what we're dealing with, so that we can eventually fly. Take another level of consciousness by awareness and lift up, which is NASA. That's the second word we're going to deal with. The word NASA in America comes from here. NASA, which means to lift, but also means armor bearer and marry. In order to lift off, you got to marry Christ, because he's at the highest, most high God. I love you guys. Once again, please like, subscribe, share, and stay tuned in. And stay tuned even when you click off here.